Out of, I think it's about 300 songs that John and I wrote together, we never had a dry session.
In a moment that was both surprising and deeply heartfelt, Paul McCartney, now 80 years old, finally revealed his 5 favorite songs from the Beatles' legendary catalog. But what stunned fans wasn't just the list itself, it was the reasons behind each pick, which veered far from the usual greatest hits. Instead of choosing global anthems like Let It Be or Yesterday, McCartney included a barely known B-side, a quiet tribute to John Lennon, and songs that speak more to personal meaning than commercial success. At this stage in his life, it's clear that Paul isn't chasing chart numbers anymore. He's reflecting on memory, legacy, and the deeper emotions tied to every chord. And now, for the first time, the world knows which Beatles songs truly live in his heart after 6 decades of music. When fans picture Paul McCartney's greatest Beatles moment, they usually imagine sweeping ballads or stadium-shaking anthems. But in a move that left even die-hard fans doing a double take, McCartney listed You Know My Name, Look Up the Number as one of his top 5. This wasn't just surprising, it was almost absurd. The track, originally released as a B-side in 1970, is an offbeat, almost comedic piece filled with bizarre voices, lounge-style piano riffs, and chaotic energy. It's not the kind of song you'd expect to top any serious musical list, yet for Paul, it holds a special place. He described it as zany and full of joy, saying it reminded him of the pure fun he and the band had in the studio when no one was watching, no pressure, no expectations. In fact, McCartney called it one of the most fun recordings he ever made, adding that John Lennon loved it too. While critics often dismiss the song as a novelty, Paul's choice shows that fun, not fame, is what he treasures now. And maybe that's the real message here, that even one of the greatest songwriters of all time still laughs at the weird stuff. But this wasn't the only curveball on the list, because the next song wasn't even written by Paul. In a moment of rare vulnerability, Paul McCartney included Strawberry Fields Forever on his list, one of the few Beatles songs that he didn't write himself. Written primarily by John Lennon, the track is often praised for its dreamlike structure, surreal lyrics, and haunting tone. McCartney's choice here speaks volumes. It's not just about admiration, it's about respect. For decades, fans and critics have speculated about the competitive tension between Lennon and McCartney, painting them as creative rivals rather than collaborators. But Paul's inclusion of this track suggests something deeper. That rivalry never clouded his appreciation for John's genius. He once called Strawberry Fields one of John's best, noting how it captured the strange magic of childhood memory and introspection in a way only Lennon could. It's a song that feels like floating, disconnected from time, and maybe at 80, that's what Paul finds most beautiful about it. It wasn't the most played or the most radio-friendly, but it's the one that lingers. And by naming it, Paul wasn't just honoring a song, he was honoring a friend. The next choice took us from surreal to soulful, with a song that wasn't written for the world, but for a child. Among Paul McCartney's 5 personal favorites, Hey Jude stands out not just for its popularity, but for its origin, born not from ambition but empathy. Written in 1968, McCartney composed the song to comfort Julian Lennon, John's son, during the painful breakup of his parents. Originally titled Hey Jules, the song morphed into a global anthem of healing, but at its core, it remains an intimate gesture from a friend trying to soothe a child caught in emotional crossfire. What's fascinating is that despite its enormous success, topping charts for weeks, selling millions, McCartney never speaks of it in terms of fame. In interviews, he recalls the moment of inspiration with almost fatherly tenderness, saying he just wanted to offer some kind of hope. Even the iconic "Na Na Na" refrain, which seems endless on paper, became one of the most universally recognized sing-alongs in music history. Ironically, not everyone believed in it at first. George Harrison reportedly clashed with Paul over the arrangement, and the song nearly didn't happen the way we know it today. But McCartney trusted his gut, and that instinct led to one of the most powerful pieces in the Beatles catalog. It's not just a song, it's a hug wrapped in melody. But Paul's next favorite wasn't loud or anthemic. Instead, it was quiet, finger-picked, and rooted in a powerful cause. McCartney's next favorite isn't just a beautiful acoustic ballad, it's a quietly powerful message wrapped in melody. Blackbird, released in 1968 as part of a White Album, has long been a fan favorite, but few knew its deeper meaning until Paul revealed the truth behind its creation. He wrote it as a symbolic tribute to the American Civil Rights Movement, particularly inspired by the struggles of black women fighting for equality in the segregated South. In his own words, McCartney said, I didn't mind a black girl going through struggles in the U.S. at the time, and I just wanted to give her hope. It's a song about resilience and silent strength, told not through a protest march or a speech, but through gentle guitar picking and poetic metaphor. Musically, it's deceptively simple. Lyrically, it's timeless. Paul's inclusion of Blackbird in his top 5 says a lot about the kind of legacy he values. Not just songs that made headlines, but songs that offered healing and solidarity in the face of injustice. It's activism without noise, and that quiet strength is perhaps what gives the track its lasting power. But the next song on Paul's list wasn't about global causes. It was about something even more universal: loneliness. And it broke all the Beatles' musical rules. Few Beatles songs hit as hard or as unexpectedly as Eleanor Rigby, and Paul McCartney's decision to include it in his top 5 is both revealing and profound. Released in 1966 on the Revolver album, this track marked a bold departure from the Beatles' traditional sound. There were no guitars, no drums, just a stark, haunting string quartet accompanying lyrics that dove headfirst into themes of loneliness, anonymity, and death. For a band that had become icons of youth and rebellion, Eleanor Rigby was a sobering reminder of life's quiet tragedies. Paul has often said the song came from his own fascination with people no one notices, all the lonely people left behind in the rush of modern life. It wasn't written to be a hit, and yet it became one of the band's most critically acclaimed tracks. The character of Eleanor was fictional, but decades later, fans discovered a gravestone with that very name in a Liverpool cemetery not far from where Paul grew up, fueling eerie speculation. By including Eleanor Rigby on his list, McCartney reminds us that not all meaningful songs are joyful. Some, like this one, echo because they hold up a mirror to the parts of ourselves we rarely discuss. But despite the emotional weight of these picks, there's one Beatles song Paul has always called his favorite creation, even though it somehow didn't make this top 5. Oddly enough, the one song Paul McCartney has consistently described as his proudest creation didn't make it into his top 5 Beatles songs. That song is Here, There, and Everywhere. In multiple interviews, including one during his Life and Lyrics series, Paul called it his personal favorite, the song he's most proud of writing. So why didn't it make the list? Possibly because for McCartney, this song exists in a category all its own. Written in 1966 during the Revolver sessions, the song was reportedly crafted while Paul sat by a swimming pool, waiting for John Lennon to wake up. Inspired by Brian Wilson's harmonies and God Only Knows, the melody is delicate and fluid, the lyrics filled with intimate vulnerability. It's a love song, yes, but unlike the youthful passion of earlier Beatles tracks, this one feels grown-up, grounded, and timeless. McCartney has said he always felt it struck the perfect balance between emotional depth and musical elegance. Even John Lennon once admitted he thought it was one of Paul's best works. The fact that it didn't appear on Paul's public shortlist only adds to its mystique. Here, There, and Everywhere may not be his most famous, but in his heart it stands taller than any chart-topping hit. So what do these choices say about Paul McCartney, not as a legend, but as an 80-year-old man looking back on a lifetime of melody and meaning? Looking at Paul McCartney's 5 favorite Beatles songs, one thing becomes strikingly clear. He's no longer interested in legacy defined by fame. At 80, his picks reflect meaning, not market. From the quirky chaos of You Know My Name to the soulful ache of Eleanor Rigby, McCartney's choices are deeply personal. Less about mass appeal and more about emotional resonance. He's highlighting humor, heartbreak, social consciousness, artistic risk, and above all, connection. These aren't the songs that define the Beatles' image. They're the ones that define Paul's experience within the band. By including a Lennon masterpiece like Strawberry Fields Forever, he acknowledges the beauty in what wasn't his. By spotlighting Blackbird, he embraces the power of music as quiet protest. And with Hey Jude, he shows how compassion can become an anthem. This is not the list of a pop star chasing numbers. It's the playlist of a man who has spent his life making music and now, in his twilight years, is choosing to celebrate the songs that made him feel something real. In the end, his selections tell a story far deeper than any chart position could measure. A story of creativity, humanity, and an artist finally at peace with the music that outlived the moment. But before we wrap, there's still one final thought, the kind that makes you reflect on your own journey too. Paul McCartney's list isn't just a peek into his personal playlist, it's a glimpse into how we all change with time. At 80, he didn't choose the songs that sold the most records or earned the loudest applause. He chose the ones that meant the most, songs that made him laugh, reflect, remember, and feel. That's the power of music. It travels with us, quietly marking the chapters of our lives, even as the world moves on. And maybe that's the real story here. Not what Paul McCartney picked, but why he picked them. Because someday, we'll all have our own version of a top 5. Not the songs that made us popular, but the ones that carried us through. So if you had to choose right now just 5 songs to represent your journey, what would they be? And more importantly, why?